She talks to the walls at night a creepypasta about haunted houses. I should have known better than to take the job. I'm a handyman. For a living, my specialty is fixing up old houses for people who are either too busy or frankly do not know how to fix things themselves. I do everything from plumbing to electrical work, carpentry, and just general repairs. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and I've never come across anything like what happened with Mrs. Abernathy's house. It was an old Victorian-style home that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. The paint was peeling off the trim, there were weeds growing out of the roof, and the front door hung precariously from one hinge. When I met Mrs. Abernathy, she was an old woman, but not in a frail, fragile kind of way. She was sharp as a tack, and her eyes were as keen as a hawk's. We agreed on a price for me to stay in the house while I worked on it and fix it up as I saw fit. In exchange, I would give her half of whatever I made by selling the house after it was fixed. It seemed like a good deal to both of us. The first few days went without a hitch. I got the place cleaned up, ripped out all the rotten floorboards, and started working on the wiring, which was dangerously outdated and in some places non-existent. On the third day I was in the attic, cutting away the rotted sections of the floorboards, when I heard something strange. It sounded like a woman's voice whispering right next to my ear. At first I thought it was the wind. The house had plenty of gaps near the eaves where the wind could come in and make strange noises, so I ignored it. Then the voice started talking again, and I could make out the words, "Get out," although they didn't seem to be coming from anywhere in particular. I went back into the living space to get a break and make a cup of tea. As I stood there waiting for the water to boil, I heard it again, "Get out." This time, it sounded like it was coming from behind the wall. I shrugged it off and went back to work. But every time I stopped for a moment, I heard the same thing. "Get out, get out, get out." I tried reasoning with it. Whoever or whatever was in the walls, I told it that I wasn't going to hurt it and that I just needed to do my job. But all that did was make the whispering louder and faster. By the end of the day, I was exhausted and scared out of my mind. I packed up my things and went to spend the night at a motel instead of the house. Maybe it was just some kid messing around. There was definitely a lot of trash in the house, and maybe someone had gotten stuck in the walls while hiding something. That would explain why the voice seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. Whatever it was, I figured it would stop bothering me if I just ignored it. But the next morning, I woke up at the crack of dawn and headed straight back to the house. That's when I saw the writing. Scrawled across the bedroom wall, in what looked like blood, were the words, "Don't leave." I nearly jumped out of my skin. My heart started racing, and my hands trembled as I stared at the wall. Who had written it? Is it the same person or thing that was whispering to me? What did it want, and why was it so afraid of me? Couldn't just leave after seeing that. I had to find out what was going on. But at the same time, I didn't want to stay another night in that creepy house. So I made it my mission to finish as much as I could that day. By late afternoon, I had the entire main floor finished. All that was left to do was the bedrooms upstairs and the bathrooms. But by then, the sun had already started to set, and I didn't feel safe staying in the house alone in the dark. So I locked up and headed to the motel again. As soon as I arrived, I called the local historical society to see if they had any records of the house's past residents. Maybe someone had lived there who would have had a reason to write that message. Their records showed that Mrs. Abernathy had indeed lived there for most of her life. Her parents had built the house back in the early 1900s and had lived here until their deaths. After that, Mrs. Abernathy had inherited it and lived here alone until she sold it to me. Apparently she had no siblings or other family members. I asked if there were any records of deaths in the house, but unfortunately, the lady on the phone said that such records were confidential. I thanked her anyway and hung up. I still had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. I mean, why would the house whisper to me? And who had written that message in blood? The only thing I could think of was that Mrs. Abernathy had written it herself. Maybe she was mentally unstable and had been hiding it from me. Or maybe she knew something else was in the house and was trying to warn me. That possibility scared me, but I decided that I wasn't going to let it stop me from finishing the job. Over the next few days, I continued working on the house. I completed the bedrooms and bathrooms and even managed to get the siding fixed. Before I heard the whispers again, this time they were coming from the closet in Mrs. Abernathy's old bedroom. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the closet door. Inside was nothing but cobwebs and old clothes. I called out, asking whoever was in there to identify themselves. But when I stepped into the closet, I heard the voice right next to me. "Leave," it hissed. I screamed and ran out of the room. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. Once I was safely buckled in and away from the house, I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I told myself that it was probably just some sick teenager who had snuck into the house and was hiding in the closet. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. No one could have gotten in or out of the house without me seeing them. There were no windows that weren't boarded up, and I checked the locks every day to make sure they were working. At that point, I had two choices. Either finish the job and risk whatever was in the house, or walk away and lose all the money I'd already spent. I couldn't let that happen. I had to finish the job. But I also couldn't do it alone, so I called my friend Mark to come help me finish the last of the work. When he arrived, I explained what had been happening. Mark didn't believe me at first, but once we heard the whispers together, he was convinced. We worked quickly, taking turns keeping watch for anything strange. We finished the last of the work by late afternoon, and were just in time to catch the sunset. As soon as the last sliver of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, the whispers started. They grew louder and more frantic as darkness fell. Suddenly, a crash from upstairs made us jump. Whatever it was, it sounded like it was coming from inside the closet. Mark and I exchanged a nervous glance before grabbing some flashlights and slowly making our way up the stairs. When we reached the top, the whispers seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I could feel my heart beating in my chest. Mark, on the other hand, seemed strangely calm. He turned to me and asked, "You ready?" I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. Together, we opened the closet door. Inside, we found nothing but old clothes and cobwebs. But as we turned to leave, we saw it. Scrawled across the back of the closet door was a single word: "Go." Written in what looked like blood, I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. Whatever was in that house didn't want us there. We ran out of the house as fast as we could. I slammed the door behind me and bolted it. Then I called the police and told them about the house and what we had found. I sent 2 officers to investigate, but they didn't find anything. Of course, by the time they got there, the writing was gone, and the only evidence we had to offer was our word. The officers searched the house just to be sure, but they didn't find anyone. We never went back to that house. Mrs. Abernethy died a few months later at the age of 87. The house is still there, though. I pass by it every now and then, and I can't help but wonder what's hiding in those walls. Whatever it is, I hope it finds peace someday.